Hi, and welcome to Girls Lunch, your mealtime companion, where we talk about food, gender, sexuality, and where everyone is welcome.
I am Julia Andreas.
I am Nicole Hilton.
And this is part 2 of our home ec journey. Nicole, can you tell us what happened previously on Girls Lunch?
Previously on Dragon Ball Z. Nope. Here's what you missed on Glee. Nope. Okay, so last time we saw you beautiful people at home. We didn't see you. This is not a visual medium. Last time on Home Ec Part 1, we learned that home economics was sort of an output of the domestic science movement, which is basically sort of what it sounds like, science, but just in a domestic context. So science and measuring things and experimenting in things related to cooking, cleaning, home appliances, nutrition, and such. It was many things all in one thing, one of which is sort of a sneaky way for women to do science at a time where they were not really allowed to, quote unquote, or it was certainly frowned upon. Women did not have access to participating in the formal sciences. Let's see, we talked about some of the sort of figureheads in the movement, two white ladies whose names I don't remember. Julia will probably remind me later. And Margaret Murray Washington, who Booker T. Washington had the good fortune to be married to.
Indeed.
She was responsible for setting up a home economics program at Tuskegee for Black women and girls. A lot of colleges and universities would added programs as like a career that women could pursue. You know, this like you could be a home economist after you graduated and like be a recipe tester or be like basically an expert, a subject matter expert that, you know, companies could call upon.
Yeah, you were a food scientist, you were an engineer of like home equipment, you were a recipe creator, recipe tester, you were a marketer, you were a radio personality. You could be so many things with a home economist degree.
But we did have, a little bit of racism and a little bit of eugenics sneak in there because we always do.
It all comes back to eugenics, baby.
It sure does. So that is what I recall from last time. Did I leave out anything important?
No, I think you got the basis of it. And if anyone does not remember, they can re-listen to the episode. It's been like over a month since I think we recorded part 1.
Yeah.
So like honestly, I was like, oh yeah, we did talk about this stuff. So thank you for that beautiful, eloquent summary. Could you also name a few tropes or stereotypes you remember about home ec? I know we mentioned a few in our last ep, but can you think of any more, just like what kind of jumps out to you when you think about the class itself?
Well, I will tell a somewhat personal story that I meant to mention last episode but didn't, which is why it's great that we have part 2 just to be able to include this. Leading up to this episode and the previous one, I did some sort of like informal surveying around and asked like family and friends, like, did you have home economics? Did you have home economics? My husband went to private school, did not. I mean, he went to sort of like a college prep type high school, so obviously they did not. My mother-in-law, who would have been in school in the 60s, maybe early 70s, told me that home ec was required for the young ladies. They had to take it, and the boys had to take shop, like wood shop, which I think is fascinating.
Now, Nicole, if it was a college prep school, why would they obviously not have home ec?
Yes.
Drill into that a little bit.
Yeah, so referencing my husband Ryan's school career, you know, he would have been going to high school in the 2010s. So obviously, domestic skills sort of at that point in time, and even now, well, I mean, are undervalued. They are not considered like something that one could really make a career out of, the not like money, I guess. There's not really money to be made in domestic labor. And also, I don't know if you can major in it anymore at most like universities. I don't know if those programs really exist anymore.
Perfect.
Is that what you're getting at?
Perfect.
Okay.
This is such a good setup.
Haha, yes!
So as we will explore in today's part 2, our modern day idea of what home ec is comes from an incredibly dark period in the 50s and 60s. If the 1920s were like the Roman Empire of home ec, then the post-World War II era was like the medieval ages. It was dark, very depressing. Because why would a college prep school not teach part of a course that was originally a college course? Like home ec was originally a college course at Cornell. You mentioned like domestic things, like taking care of the home, whereas the original home ec courses were much more science-based. And how did this happen? Let's get into it.
Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, so where we left off, we were just seeing World War II on the horizon. Since home economists were so incredibly useful during World War I, the government was all about getting the gang back together for World War II. You know, we had rations, we had the rationing of World War II, which required people to get creative with recipes and substitutions. You know, we had sugar rations, for example, which made people like experiment and use honey and sorghum and corn syrup. Caro, anyone?
Yeah.
And you had, of course, home economists making these recipes, doing the science and the testing in the background, building up these, I love them so much, marketing cookbooks that came with the product.
Yeah.
You know, you ever notice like a recipe on the back of a product? A home economist put that there. The home economists also worked on nutrition. When men showed up to the draft in 1940, a third of them failed their physical due to malnutrition issues. And home economists revived a World War I slogan, "Food will win the war," because they were like, we have to bring nutrition up in the nation. A foundation was laid for our favorite geometrically incorrect nutritional policy, the food pyramid.
Still better than whatever the hell my plate is.
I freaking hate my plate. Anyways,
stupid.
That's a different episode.
It's a different episode.
These foundational bricks for our food pyramid, as we have mentioned in our school lunch episodes, were recommended dietary allowances, or RDAs. Just a little fun tidbits about RDAs. In case you did not listen to the school lunch episodes, they were basic. It contained 7 basic food groups: potatoes, grains and bread, dairy, protein, which included eggs, bean, fish, meat, and fowl, butter and margarine, that's one group, green and yellow vegetables, that's another group, and tomatoes and citrus.
Wow. I love, first of all, that potatoes is its own group.
Oh yeah, baby.
Amazing. A Hobbit wrote this. These RDAs.
I mean, tangent, but like, potatoes have almost every vitamin that you need to survive. I think minus A and E. I could be wrong, but I was like reading somewhere about how if you have potatoes and you have dairy, you basically have a complete nutritional meal. So mashed potatoes.
Yeah, I was gonna say mashed potatoes or like au gratin potatoes. That's all I need.
That's all you need.
Thank God I can finally live my dream and just live off of au gratin and mashed potatoes.
Hell yeah. I mean, it did make me think about The Martian, that book and movie, and I was like, oh yeah, he did live off of potatoes. Anyway.
Yeah.
Tangent over. Okay. School lunches also became a way to teach the populace about nutrition. So home ec people were like, not only can we try and provide nutrition, we can also teach the children about how to be nutritious. People at this time in the 40s were so deep in like wellness and diets and all of that stupid stuff, where it's like, of course today we know the difference between a calorie and a vitamin, but that wasn't always the case. Like, the public had to be taught about the difference between like a calorie and a vitamin.
I mean, it's worth also noting that like at this point, it's only the 1940s, we definitely do not have the little nutritional label on the back of anything, or even probably an ingredients list. They're just like, I don't know, this is a can of stuff.
It's tomatoes, what you want?
Yeah.
And so, school lunches became, a way to educate people. We also had dietitians, out in the field, like we did in World War One. Women on the front lines, feeding and taking care of thousands of soldiers being captured and sent to prisoner of war camps also, and, surviving there and helping feed other thousands of prisoners of war. I think maybe for the foreseeable future, I would love to do some bonus episodes. Maybe they're short, like 30-minute episodes, about just like all these little tangents coming out of home ec and like all these incredible women who took their sciences and made really lasting changes that I can't fit into a 2-part episode.
Yeah.
Not to be a 5-part episode.
Yeah, even as just we've been talking about this one section, I'm like, oh, there's this and there's this. Like, you're talking about World War II. Like, we want to do an episode about rationing. I'm like, oh, victory gardens are also a thing, I mean, this ties back into our donut dollies as well.
Yeah.
They were here making donuts.
They were there making donuts. Yeah, but now that home economists had helped America get through not just 1, but 2 world wars, surely they would be recognized for their service, right?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
The federal budget for the Bureau of Home Economics was slashed post-World War II, and they lost a full quarter of their funding.
I'm glad that doesn't happen anymore, though.
Oh, yeah, no. Funding is so secure.
Yeah, we don't have, like, whole departments of the United States government that are just being cut way down, or even just abolished entirely.
There's a tear. There's like a single tear just rolling down my face. Back in the schoolroom, home economists were trying to make their clubs, like every high school thereabouts had like a home ec club. And they're trying to make their clubs cool to the teens again. Because teens love having agency, the home ec people put the rebrand of home economics into the hands of the high school girls, who at this point had very different ideas about what the future of femininity looked like. They chose the name the Future Homemakers of America, with the motto to build homes for America's future, homes where living will be an expression of everything that is good and fair. Heavy foreshadowing.
Yeah, that's so interesting, the phrasing, because that sort of reminds me of, and this might be intentional, a lot of schools, including my high school, have groups called the Future Farmers of America, or FFA. And so I'm like, interesting.
Yeah, I think it was definitely influenced by that naming. But it was also pretty clear that, like, the home economists were not the ones forcing this mindset on kids at the time. It was very much like the cultural mindset, where these girls were like, this war was so terrible. We lost fathers, brothers, cousins, and we just want to make a safe place.
Yeah.
It definitely didn't have this intention of where we're about to get to, of like extreme female oppression, but it seems like ridiculous to look back on and be like, well, you have this like rocket ship of progress for like women's rights, and then it like comes crashing back down in the 50s and 60s, and like, how did that happen? And you feel like it should have been mainly forced onto people. But with like the severity of World War II, a lot of people just wanted to get back to a sense of normalcy.
I was having this conversation with some folks at work the other day in a very restrained way, in the way that when you know way too much about something and you have to pass off as like, passing like, oh yeah, I know a little bit about this. Just the way that so much of our culture today is influenced by or directly shaped by the post-war period. Like so much of our current, especially like, it's we're approaching Thanksgiving time, Christmas, like traditions and things that you think like, yes, we have always done this. I would say a good 85% of that comes from the post-war period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And marketing in the post-war period also. Yeah, because that's, as we've said many times, the only thing that Americans understand is marketing.
Consumerist culture. Yeah, no, that is something I also have to be restrained about.
Yeah, like
at the
I'm very
Thanksgiving
normal.
table.
I know what's a normal amount to know about this.
Yeah. Someone once mentioned the jungle in a family conversation and they got like the premise so wrong. They're like, it's about like how to ethically slaughter animals. And I'm like, I was just sitting there holding my tongue, like, I don't need to get into this with
Your little hands are just
my hands
vibrating.
are like shaking. I'm like, I don't.
Yep.
Anyway, back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Nicole, could you read this passage to give everyone some context for the culture that was in America post World War II?
I sure can. By 1960, more than 1/3 of women married before the age of 20 and 2/3 married before the age of 24. Birth rates bounced up after more than a decade of deprivation and war. The share of female college students fell to 1/3, down from half the total number of students in 1920. Almost every man aged 25 to 34 worked in the 1950s, but only 1/3 of women. Despite technological advances that made laundry and its like faster and easier, women spent as much time on housework in the 1950s as they had 30 years before, about 52 hours a week. For African American families, the rise in housewifery could be seen as a sign of progress because it meant men were finally earning enough to support a family. Ah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So I think what I really liked about this quote was it showed, like, in terms of female inclusion in the job force and in education, it was on like a steady incline until World War II, where it like plummeted. And then now it had to like go back up a steady incline. You know, it's what you mentioned earlier in the sense of, oh, it's always been like this, or it's always done like that. It's like, no, women have previously been included in the job force and in sciences, and it's only like this very recent period of history.
The period that sort of lives rent-free in a lot of America's cultural consciousness.
Exactly. Where like that wasn't the case, and it feels like we have to build ourselves up from zero. At the same time, in like the 1960s, divorce spiked. 1 in 10 white families were headed by single moms. 2 in 10 families were headed by single moms for non-white families. Women were still in the workforce, just in different roles than they had previously. In 1955, 44% of women of color were working, and 33% of white women were working and rising. So, like, even though it plummeted back down, the rates of women having to work continued back up because, surprise, surprise, the idea that we have of the 1950s sort of nuclear family is a load of baloney, and most people had to, like, both mom and dad had to work.
Yeah, and that's the case now. I mean, even just purely from like a inflation economic, you know, most middle-class families, to be able to pay all of your bills, it's very hard to do that on a single income, is what I'll say.
So what did home economists, those first female scientists, think about like this whole shift in culture?
I don't know.
This quote from The Secret History of Home Economics by Danielle Dreilinger, I think sums it up pretty well. She says, home economists responded in ways that would swiftly and radically shape the field into how most people think of it today. Repressive, boring, and trying to keep women barefoot and pregnant. Home economists didn't create these changes. It addressed them, it took advantage of them, and in ways its practitioners tragically did not see, it reinforced them and suffered from them. Flora Rose, who was a imperative founder of the home ec movement, described home ec as like a three-edged tool. She said it gave women a means of earning a living before getting married. It allowed women to learn the knowledge and skills to make a good home for her husband and family. And third, it gave moms job skills for, quote, productive service and occupation once kids are out of the house. It was like, oh yeah, home ec is great because you'll earn money before you get married. And once you're married, you no longer need to earn money. Then you'll know how to take care of your family. And then should anything happen, or, you know, once kids are out of the house, you can make more money.
Yeah, I do think it's very interesting that this three-edged tool is all centered around like a family, not necessarily like the woman doing it because she likes it or because she likes science or because she, you know, finds it challenging. It's like all as means of supporting. It's all centering around that nucleus of family, husband, etc.
Yeah, it's very clearly like, oh, you are a woman, your whole job is going to be family in some form, whether it's preparing for a family, raising a family, or supporting that family in another means. And so there was a lot of hypocrisy in the field of home ec, because the field not only created or was aiming to create future homemakers, but, it also created jobs for women, like we had seen previously, teachers, professors, dietitians, extension agents, recipe creators, textbook writers, radio hosts, and more. And these were all paying jobs. The greatest irony, as we'll get to, is that home economists' whole careers were centered around telling women to stay home and cook and clean, while the same people who were telling women to do this were women who had full-time jobs, and they did not do that.
That's like trad wife to a
Exactly.
T. Like trad wife influencer is like, stay home, take care of your family, cook everything from scratch, just like I do, except not actually, because my job is pretending like I do that and filming it and marketing and social media, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like,
I mean, like,
exactly.
I refuse to believe any trad wife creator actually does anything they say they do.
I refuse to believe anybody on the internet anymore. It is a cesspool, and it makes me very sad.
Do not believe trad wives on Instagram.
I think the young people, I think we all, young and old alike, just need another reminder that not everything you see on the internet is true.
In fact, nothing you see on the internet is probably true.
Strawberry Fields, nothing is real. They were right.
Anyway, trad wife episode coming soon, probably.
Yeah.
Anyway, so an example of this, which is very akin to our trad wife conversation we just had, there's a home economist named Marie Child Husted who was behind Betty Crocker, another future episode, and the highest ranking woman at General Mills, probably another episode, let's be honest. And she was like, we need equal pay for men and women. She was a high ranking businesswoman, she was very powerful. And she was very like pro women in the workforce, but then she was also like quoted saying, let's help every woman recognize that true homemaking is still the most important career for women. And this brings to mind another friend of ours, Brownie Wise, a high-ranking businesswoman who actually didn't do anything that she marketed women for.
Yeah. Yeah.
She didn't cook and clean her own house. I mean, like, she did, but not in the sense of what she was selling to her public. Another tangent, we had, I think I mentioned her before, Flora Rose, and another woman, Martha Van Rensselaer, who ran the Department of Home Ec at Cornell. They were romantic partners for decades.
Ooh.
Neither of them married to a man. They never had children, but they were
such good friends.
They were gay.
Really good friends.
They were pretty clearly a lesbian couple. They were also good friends with Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
And when Martha passed, Eleanor was like, it's so hard to lose your spouse, man.
Oh.
In like a letter.
Yeah.
She's like,
oh, man.
I get it, man. It's so hard to lose your spouse. Not in like those exact words, but it's like super clear that like, yeah, these women were like domestic partners.
Domestic science partners also, to be clear.
But they were also like, to women, they were like, oh no, you should marry a man and have kids.
Isn't that wild?
It's just like this giant film of hypocrisy happening at this moment. Anyway, let us take a little break and learn about the food fact of the day.
Let's go.
Whee!
Okay, so, Julia.
Yes.
You grew up in the DMV.
I did, in fact. Oh, wait, for those who are not.
Oh, yeah, right. I just assumed.
Not the Driver Motor Vehicle Association.
Not the Department of Motor Vehicles. DMV is shorthand for DC, Maryland, and Virginia. That's our region.
Mm-hmm. The DC metro area, yeah.
Yeah. So you grew up around these parts.
Mm-hmm.
You have shopped at a giant grocery store before.
Yes, and by giant you mean the brand.
Yes.
Not just a large
giant
grocery store.
capital G.
Yes.
Yes. And this is a trick question because you and I have shopped at a giant grocery store together. I knew the answer to this, but I needed you to say it. Okay. So, Giant, capital G, the brand, is also my grocery store choice. There's one just up the street from my house where I live now. It's where my parents shopped when I was a kid, and they always took us grocery shopping, so, like, makes sense. But when I say giant, Julia, you might be picturing the Jolly Green Giant, but in the context of a grocery store named Giant, what logo are you picturing?
I'm going to, like, just close my eyes and just, like, see what I see in my mind's eye.
What's in your mind palace?
It's definitely purple.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like there's, like, a symbol or, like, a picture also of, like, a fruit bowl. I always imagined it like a fruit bowl or, like, a salad bowl.
Yeah. I just thought it was like a little, like a wedges of, like, lemon or apple or something like that. Salad bowl's good, too. Okay, so that's what you picture, is this purple logo. Have you seen the one below it? Do you know her?
Let me scroll down. No, I don't know her.
So that logo also says Giant. It is in all caps. It is red, very bold, and the A has like a little leaf in it. Okay, so you don't know her, but it would be very possible if you live in our region or if you've traveled around this region to have seen both of these logos for both of these giant grocery stores. What if I told you these are two different giant grocery stores that both operate in the Mid-Atlantic region?
Hubba what?
So these are two different stores, and I recognize that people at home are not looking at these logos, so this may be confusing. Even if you have the logos, I don't know how much it would help because they're named exactly the same thing. This is a little odyssey that I went on this week. So, the first giant grocery store, Purple Giant, sometimes referred to as Giant Landover because that's where their headquarters are, was opened in 1936 in Washington, D.C. It was founded by Nehemiah Meyer, N.M. Cohen, and Samuel Lerman. So N.M. Cohen was a rabbi originally from Palestine who immigrated to the U.S. after World War I, opened a kosher meat market in Pennsylvania, opened a couple of those, eventually moved to the D.C., Maryland region, and made friends with Samuel Lerman, who's a food distributor, and he sort of provided the financial backing to open Giant Landover, which they opened the first one in the middle of the Great Depression, like I said, 1936, and they sort of emphasized, high quality at low prices. And it did very well. Obviously, it's still around today. It was innovative at the time because it sold both perishables and non-perishables. As we talked about in our grocery store episode, this was somewhat uncommon. Mm-hmm. You used to have to, as one of my favorite YouTube clips says, go to 5 or 6 stores. But now you could go to just one. This giant, Purple Giant, Landover Giant, is mostly based in Maryland and D.C. Okay. So you got that. That's the giant that you know, that I know, that we all love. The other giant, second giant, red logo, sometimes referred to as Giant Carlisle, because that's where their headquarters are, actually began more than a decade before, in 1923.
Oh.
They originally were a 2-man butcher shop called the Carlisle Meat Market that was operated by David D.J. Javich, and he opened the Giant, all caps, Giant Food Shopping Center in 1936 in Lewistown, Pennsylvania, and sold perishables and non-perishables. Is there an echo in here?
Highly suspect.
Isn't it suspicious that there are like 2 grocery stores that are named very similar things, opened in very similar circumstances? Both of the founders go by like 2-letter first name. Opened in 1936.
In Pennsylvania.
And this Giant Carlisle, mostly is located in Pennsylvania, but they do also have locations in Maryland, Virginia, I want to say New Jersey as well. They're a little more spread out.
That's so wild.
Now, to make this really confusing, is you can be shopping at Giant Carlisle, Red Giant, in Pennsylvania, and you can see something like this can of pumpkin right here. I pulled this image from their website, Julia. What do you notice? What do you know
got the fruit bowl.
Yes.
It's got the purple giant logo.
It has the logo of the other giant. Now, why would that be?
Oh, probably because they're got the same suppliers and owned by like the same parent company.
There we go. Ding, 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 ding.
Yay!
There we go. There we go. We got a smart cookie over here. So the twist is they are owned by the same megacorp.
Damn.
So Red Giant and Purple Giant are both owned by Ahold Delhaize, which is a Dutch company, I believe. They own both of these supermarket chains, as well as the following other grocery stores. Julia, I've posted an image here. Do you recognize some of these brands?
That's a Food Lion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Super Food Lion. There's a lot of Food Lions.
Yeah. Food Lion.
Albertsons?
Nope. They do own a store chain called Albert,
Oh.
which is different than Albertsons,
Okay.
which is, again, very confusing. The other one you might recognize, or other folks in the U.S. might recognize, is Stop and Shop, which did for a time have the same little lemon wedge, apple slice wedge logo as Giant.
Oh.
But now they have this sort of like red light, green light logo.
Mm-hmm.
They're all owned by this Dutch corporation, Ahold Delhaize. Now, each store is locally owned and operated, right? So, like, usually it is, like any other franchise, still owned by people in the community. People in the community work there. It's not like they're importing a bunch of, like, Dutch workers to come and bag your groceries.
That'd be crazy.
It'd be wild. But it's still a franchise, right? So the money is still going to trickle back up to them. They are, quote, according to their website, one of the world's largest food retail groups, which is a phrase that I hate.
I hate that, yeah.
They own supermarkets and some e-commerce businesses as well. And they're global. So in the US, Europe, and Indonesia, randomly. And, sigh, they're also investing in AI, which I don't care about. I don't want to talk about. I don't. I saw that and my eyes glazed over and immediately went to some other webpage because I don't care. Now, you mentioned Albertsons earlier, Julia, and I think that is a good reference point because Ahold Delhaize is not unique in this, right? In that they own a lot of other grocery stores and supermarkets. This is often true in the U.S. Like, a lot of our grocery store brands are owned by just a couple of parent companies. So Albertsons also owns Safeway, Albertsons obviously, Vons, Acme, Cars, Shaw's, and a bunch of others. And you also have Kroger, who owns, obviously, Kroger, Fry's, where I used to shop in Flagstaff, Ralph's, Fred Meyer, Harris Teeter, Food for Less, Pick and Save, Smith's. Again, there's more. And this is really not a unique phenomenon. Like, it's not exclusive to just grocery stores, right? This is common in the U.S. with, like, media companies or consumer products. If you ever see those, like, I see these go around on the internet every so often of, like, giant webs of, like, the one parent company and all of the little branches and fingers of, like, all of the products and stuff that they own. News companies especially is, like, there's like 4 or 5 corporations that own all of the news stations, media outlets, publications, like everything. So in conclusion, everything is corporations and capitalism. Thank you all so much. I will not be taking questions.
No, that's true. I'm happy to see that a grocery store close to my heart that it's not on this list, Piggly Wiggly. You can pry Piggly Wiggly from my cold dead hands. I'm sure they're owned by some parent company, but...
I mean, probably, yeah. This was a good humbling experience for me because I like to shop at Giant, and I'm like, it's better than, like, Walmart or whatever, or Safeway because it's local. It's like, no, bitch.
No.
No, it's not. Nothing is local anymore.
I'm gonna humble brag about my grocery shopping.
Please.
Here in Montana, we do not have a Giant. But where David and I shop and do our grocery shopping is called Town and Country. It is employee owned, so it makes me feel a little better.
Yeah. One thing I will say that I had in here but I took out because I was afraid it was going to be too long is that one main difference between these two giants, which I think is interesting since they are technically owned by the same parent company, is that Purple Giant, the one that you and I are more familiar with, Julia, does allow unions versus Red Giant does not.
Huh.
Which I think is interesting.
Well, I mean, like, these parent companies didn't make all these grocery stores. It just acquired
They just bought
all these
them.
grocery stores, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
They keep their own sort of, like, flair and regionality.
The illusion of choice. The illusion of choice is definitely a phrase that we should have mentioned at some point here.
Thank you for that enlightening history of the Giant grocery store. Let us get wiggy with it as we dive into the deep, depressing depths of post-war women's rights.
Womp womp.
Womp womp, let's go.
Let's go.
So in this new post-war era, technology in abundance made pre-war home economy subject matter like washing clothes and doing dishes and canning and rationing kind of obsolete because we had technology. You know, the robots could do all that for us. So what did home economists even need to write about? We weren't rationing anymore. Like, we had all this abundance. Enter the field of child psychology.
Ooh, that's not a twist that I thought was coming.
Oh, hell yeah, girl. We're getting crazy here.
I'm ready.
So instead of learning about how to can peaches, now home economists were focusing on teaching women how to manage the emotional needs and relationships in her family. This new trend was called family life education.
Okay.
This is where we get the hierarchy of needs, which is...
Oh, Maslow? That fool?
Yeah. Survival, love. I'm raising my hand every time I say this. Survival, love, esteem, self-actualization. Post-World War II, people wanted to focus on something more meaningful than, like, laundry or chores. They thought maybe if we perfect the family structure and, you know, we make people as, like, reach their self-actualization, we can avoid all wars in the future. Maybe we never have to experience something like this again. And perhaps maybe do some light eugenics.
Oh, just a little bit.
We can't escape it.
Nope.
So in the classroom, in schools, things started to take, to our modern eye, a severely gruesome turn for women and families. Home economy curriculum guides now focused on how girls could improve themselves to be more appealing, to have that perfect sort of family structure, especially to the opposite sex. Could you please read this little clip?
I'm so glad because I have never had anyone tell me how to dress or how to act in a way that would make me more appealing to a man. Thank God someone's doing this. No one has been doing this or saying this ever. This quote says, "The textbook writers borrowed a new chummy tone from teen magazines. Every teenage girl could and should become more likable," the textbook said. South Dakota students could assess, how do I rate as a date? Girls should not waste time worrying. That would put lines in their pretty faces. Nor should they wear black, which would make them look wan. The New York City curriculum guide said, an Alabama teacher observed her students and recorded the flaws each girl had to correct in her notebook.
It gets worse. Not only did women kind of have to, or these girls were now not focusing on, physical tasks that they needed to do to manage a household, but instead, reflections on how they were failing and how they could improve themselves to, better manage the emotional needs of a household. We got this added sort of a layer of the marriage course. So the marriage course was intended to reduce the level of divorce. Like we said, it was on spite, on rise in the 60s. By 1961, more than 1,200 colleges and universities offered this course, this MRS degree, if you will. The textbooks written for this class had only one idea of what a marriage should look like. Of course, the nuclear family, heterosexual, intact, and white.
Right. Single-parent
families were, quote, broken, and mixed marriages were, quote, doomed to fail.
And also, it's worth noting, 1961, I think, yeah, there definitely are parts of the U.S. where interracial marriage is illegal at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a reminder.
In my research, it was the reason that single or mixed marriages were doomed to fail was, partially that racism thing. But it was also that, you would have kids, and those kids would never be fully white. And so they're just going to be depressed because they'll never actually be able to do anything with their lives.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, God. One, marriage course textbook also stated that women should get their hymen stretched before their honeymoon so that sex would be, quote, comfortable, and that it would be a shame if no one got to enjoy their honeymoon when they would likely never have that much sex again.
What? I want to barf.
I know.
How do they, I mean, I don't want to know, but when they say, get your hymen stretched, what are they implying? Certainly they're not telling girls to masturbate. Because that's not
I think more medically inclined, like a speculum.
go to a... Okay. Oh, God. I hate this.
Yeah.
I hate
No,
this.
none of it's great. Here's a quote from Danielle's book that gave me a hearty chuckle.
I need one. I need one, man.
This time. Coming from a liberal arts background, Nicole, could you please read her summary of this sort of cultural moment?
Yeah, I'm reading ahead and I'm a little scared, but... So she says, quote, "So, cross your legs, stretch your hymen, and sacrifice any career ambitions you might have, and you could be happily married. That was the promise. Would it work? Who knew?" Bowman said. He freely admitted that there was no research evidence that the marriage course improved students' partnerships. But who cared, he wrote. There was no research evidence that most of the liberal arts curriculum was effective in whatever it aimed to either. That's great. It's like, well, sir, do you have any proof that this marriage course really works? No, but do you have any proof that your stupid thing works? Haha, I didn't think so, so do my thing anyway.
So Danielle makes like a lot of great points about this, about how like this whole idea of child psychology and family dynamics and like emotional needs was coming from like 2 or 3 professional, look at the heavy air quotes, professional men who just had like extremely oppressive views. There was like no science behind it whatsoever. It was just like these guys being like, I think a woman should do this, therefore I'm gonna make it my whole career.
Yeah, that sounds like this. I was going to say this period of history. That sounds just like any period of history.
Yeah.
And I want to say also, like, maybe it's worth mentioning, I work with plenty of child psychologists, and they're great. There's some value to, like, if you are planning to be a mother, and that is something you want to do, to, like, understanding, like, child development and, like, you know, being able to teach your children healthy coping skills and, like, understanding as a parent, like, their emotional state and things like that. So that, you know, you can give them the sort of tools for success so they can grow up and be great little humans. I don't think that's what this is exactly.
No.
Was there any kind of like parenting type? Like, I mean, I know there's like a marriage course here that's theoretically about, you know, the husband and wife.
I mean, this is the time period where we lost the practice baby of home ec. This is when they were like, well, you're not really, there's no male father figure, so you can't actually raise this baby in your feminist commune. So, no, not really.
I think we'd be better off if we raised some babies in a feminist commune. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And again, like, you know, the 60s, we had, like, the heavy sort of, like, commercialization of the home in many ways. But, you know, as we talked about in our baby food episode, like, how in the 60s it was, like, formula, man.
Right.
And you had, like, this sort of cry it out and...
You and I were talking just before we started recording about how, you know, men of a certain generation do not really, like, there was no expectation for them to really participate in the child rearing or the child taken care of.
It was actively discouraged, honestly.
Yeah.
It was like men were not even in the delivery room when you had your baby, right? Like, they were in the father's club or whatever it was called with their cigars.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, no, there was not very much good child psychology. It was a very, very new field. We had just thought about, oh, maybe kid do have feeling. Maybe little person is person. Huh.
And even beyond that, like, childhood is a distinct period, and children are not just, like, smaller adults. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are people, but, like, it's different than, you know, their brains are still developing and all that type of stuff.
And so there was probably a lot of science around it, but I would not say it was good science at this point in time.
Yeah.
But what caused this sort of cultural shift to, like, this very strong, very powerful push towards the nuclear family stereotype that we have in our heads when we think about post-World War culture? And that was fear of the Cold War and communism.
Ah, yes, those commies.
If everyone did her part, peace and quiet might someday reign again, was sort of the idea at the time. Where it was like you were under this kind of constant fear of nuclear destruction, and you wanted to try your best to make everyone happy so that this didn't happen. And you and I are not surprised, but this fell mainly onto the angel of the household, as we have talked about many times.
Ah, yes.
To fight communism, as an American, the thought was that we, America, had to bring modernity to the poor and underdeveloped countries. Otherwise, they would fall to communism.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like colonial consumerism kind of all over again, like in the 1920s. Hi, Nestle, where it was like, oh, hey, come buy our products and we shall lead you to modernity, but also enslave you for our own purposes.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a very colonialist mindset.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, what did the feminists think of all this, right? You have, like, this big cultural push for everyone to sort of, like, bring this nuclear family out into the world. We have to, like, perform it ourselves as strongly as possible. All of the media that's going out there, all of, like, our documentation, everything that you read about in, like, the 50s is this very, in 60s is this very, very strong white nuclear family dynamic where the man goes out and works, the wife stays at home. Is any of that true? Not really. Maybe for like a very specific small number of people, but that's definitely not representative of America. And at the same time, in like the 70s, you have this giant feminist wave. What did they think about this? And Nicole, I have a question. Do you know who Robin Morgan is?
That name sounds very familiar, but I couldn't tell you who she is.
She is a famous feminist of the 70s. She co-organized the Miss America protests, the protests where the term bra burners came from, even though there was actually no burning of bras, but, you know, whatever. And she is a self-described radical feminist.
Okay.
And she actually gave a speech during the National Home Ec Convention in which she addressed the crowd as, quote, the enemy.
Okay.
And then gave them a right dressing down for being hypocritical. Like, a part of the, of her whole feminist stance and, like, her radicalization, she said, was becoming a mother. Where she's like, the fuck is this? There's no support for moms. My husband doesn't do shit. Like, I'm expected to do all of this stuff, and I get no assistance. And somehow it's my fault. Anyway, I think she's an interesting historical figure.
Hey everybody, this is Nicole from the editing room, just chiming in to say we did a little bit more research into Robin Morgan after we finished recording, and it turns out she said some pretty awful things about trans people. I guess we should have suspected from a self-proclaimed radical feminist. We still wanted to mention this speech that Robin Morgan gave since it's important to the history of home ec, but we want to be clear that we are not endorsing all of her views. Transphobia is not welcome on our show. Thanks.
But after, like, Morgan's talk at the convention, there was a pretty fast, like, 180 in home ec. It was, like, a really big wake-up call. But, like, the Journal of Home Economics went from article titles that were, like, the best apron for your, like, kitchen or whatever to now that women are liberated. It was an article title.
Okay.
And within this article, there was a statement. Nicole, would you please read it?
It says, we have been teaching women that both careers and childcare-homemaking, two full-time jobs, are their jobs, and if they cannot do both well, they are failures. We do not teach men the same things, and neither does anyone else. All right.
So from there, home ec began to rebrand itself from the very sexist and oppressive reputation it had had for the past 20-ish years. By the time the 80s came around, basically all the founding women of the home ec movement had either died or retired, right? Like, it was started in the 20s. Around the 80s, at the same time, a report called A Nation at Risk was published. Nicole, do you know this report?
I don't know the title, but I'm skimming ahead a little bit, and I do think that I'm familiar with this, yeah.
You probably have heard of it.
Yeah.
Published April 1983 by the Reagan Presidential National Commission on Excellence. This report basically said that the U.S. was falling behind in educational superiority.
Yep.
And that school curriculums needed cut hours spent on English, PE, health, math, and home ec to make space for more rigorous topics.
Such as? Do we know?
Like science, biology, chemistry, you know, things that would help us make bombs.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Or get us to the moon, whichever happened fastest. I mean, we were already at the moon at that point, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
As much as I'd love to get into the Nation at Risk report and how much it is a load of baloney, I will exercise restraint because we don't have time.
That's noble of you.
And not because we've already been recording for like over an hour. Anyway, surprise, surprise, the report was the killing blow to home ec. Kind of after this report came out, funding for it dwindled really fast. Like, a lot of its curriculum was replaced. Like you mentioned earlier, Nicole, college prep schools like my own and Ryan's did not have any sort of home ec classes because why would you teach that?
Yeah.
We need to teach kids to be ready for college, not to be ready for domestic labor.
It's a capitalist argument, right? Of like, you need to teach them something to be able to get a job, to economically contribute, not necessarily like home, domestic, whatever. Like, I don't know, sew a button, I don't know, figure it out. Buy a new shirt, don't worry about it.
Yeah, so like home ec after that dwindled, and it leads us to the question of, do people still even have home ec? Yes, but it's now under a different name.
It's Family and Consumer Sciences.
Yes, the National Family and Consumer Sciences Association. In fact, this is fun fact, more people have actually earned a bachelor's degree in home ec than in math.
Like cumulatively?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, that's wild.
Home ec is still around. Conventions still exist, and it's a field that's actually starting to take root again, especially post-pandemic. How many of us started crafts or hobbies during the pandemic that you might have assumed were something that was taught in home ec?
We were all baking bread.
We were all baking, we were canning, we were sewing, we were mending, we were cooking and cleaning and other home maintenance skills that we needed to learn how to do when we couldn't or didn't want to get that labor and skill from somewhere else, right? Like when we were trapped in the pandemic, you could not have your cleaning lady come over.
Right.
You could not have takeout or whatever. You had to start doing a lot of that stuff yourself, and a lot of us learned via the internet how to do those things again.
I think to some degree also, I mean, being basically trapped in your home, you really look around at your home and try to think like, I think it makes you take more stock of like the space that you are inhabiting, you know, because if you were commuting or if you were going to school, you're not at home for a good 8-10 hours of your day. You're only home to sleep and chill a little bit before you go to bed. But when you're in your home all day, it puts you more in touch with the space that you're inhabiting, I think.
Yeah.
For good and for bad. I know plenty of us, myself included, who went, you know, a little stir crazy during the pandemic. But
I feel like we all kind of went a little stir crazy.
Yeah.
But you also have more time when you're like, okay, I'm not commuting 2 hours every day. I have 2 hours to figure out something at home. A lot of people started sourdough. I did not. I started that later because I'm cool and late to the party. But yeah, and so there's definitely a call for and a newly renewed interest in all these home ec sort of domestically coded skills that we just don't really learn in school anymore.
because in a lot of ways, you quote unquote don't need to, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, you really can get by in our today's era of not necessarily knowing how to cook. We have so much packaged food and restaurants and takeout and all that type of stuff that, you know, I mean, I'm not about to say that like don't learn to cook. Obviously, that's counter to like our whole thing. But like, you know, we talk about marketing. The market has found ways to sort of outsource a lot of domestic labor.
Yeah, I hope this like newfound reinterest in home ec things will help kind of like bring back this, because I think it is handy to know how to fix something in your home that's broken. Like, you know, the original home economists were teaching you how to fix your dishwasher. They were teaching you how to fix your laundry machine. You know, it wasn't just like, I'm going to mend a button, which is helpful too. Like, don't get me wrong, I've broken lots of buttons off my shirts. But it was also like, hey, get your wrench, get under there. You're going to learn how to fix this because you need to. And
dare I say, in our late stage capitalist society, learning how to fix things or do things for yourself is rebellious, even because the alternative is like, oh, dang, my dishwasher's broke. Well, I'll just buy a new one. No. There are larger societal forces that would like for you to just buy a new one, right? Because it makes them money.
Like I mentioned before, there's so much I did not get to touch on with home ec. So many topics like the kitchen computer, the electric kitchen, the Flemmy Kittrell and her escapades across the world and like so many things did not get to touch on. I'd love to do some bonus episodes.
I hope that we get to return to a dietary model where potatoes are their own food group.
Oh, my plate? Oh, you're asking about my plate? My plate is just a potato.
It's just, honestly, Julia's My Plate is a single gigantic roasted sweet potato.
I have one downstairs. I'm not even joking.
I knew it.
Thanks for lunching with us. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Our theme music is Red Onions by Louis Zong. Please check out the rest of his album Vegetable Soul in the description. If you have an episode suggestion or want to say hi, you can email us at girlslunchpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Oh, I got too many dang wires. I'm like a dang robot over here. It's me. I'm the AI.
You're the AI.